Welcome to episode 64 of Fascinating, a Star Trek podcast, the Tholian Web.
In this week's episode, Kirk is trapped in the interphasic space between universes as the Enterprise battles to hold off aggressive adversaries without disrupting the local area so much as to make recovering their captain impossible. With Spock and McCoy struggling once again to coexist, is this the end for Kirk? Or can logic and intuition combine to save the day?
According to our instruments, space itself is literally breaking up. There is no known phenomenon which would account for these readings.
Good evening, Ian. How are you?
Not too bad, Gerry. How are you?
There's no instruments that can account for how I feel just now.
Really?
Not really, no.
Shouldn't have said that then.
No.
There wasn't a better clip.
Couldn't think of anything yet. No, there wasn't actually. Scared that there might have been better clips, which have been already taken by full-length clips.
Sure.
That's a problem.
You could have used one of Kirk's lines.
He didn't have many this week, did he?
That's true. It's a Kirk light episode.
It's light all round. It seems to me that it was an episode where they were trying to scrimp and save on budget.
Certainly there's no added expense being used.
No guest stars. The other ship is simply the Enterprise redressed slightly.
But for me it works quite well. I thought it was a good episode.
So did I, yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't have a problem with it. I wonder, maybe we can get to it in the trivia, what was the situation with Shatner? Because he wasn't in very much of this, and he's the star of the show. So either I'm thinking he asked to have less lines, maybe he was going somewhere, a holiday, a wedding, and he wanted to get his part over and done with quickly so he could get out of there. Or was it the decision of the producers, and maybe Shatner was not happy about his limited screen presence?
Well, I don't have any information. I did look in these books for information on this and didn't see anything, but if any of the listeners have thoughts or if they've heard something about why this was done this way in the third season, other than it's just what the writer decided would be a good idea, you can let us know in the usual ways.
A little bit like the bookend episode you get in Murder, She Wrote, where Jessica just introduces the episode. You
get in Doctor Who as well. They used to have like Doctor Light episodes where he would show up in passing but wouldn't be one of the main characters.
Okay.
Anyhow, shall we get on with this Tholian Web thing?
Let's crack on. We begin on the bridge. There's a pensive mood, which is highlighted by an appropriately foreboding score, I thought.
Yes, and we open with a captain's log, which is not the usual way they tell us rather than show us what's going on.
5693.2. What do they tell us?
So the Enterprise is trying to find another starship called the Defiant, which has vanished without trace 3 weeks ago. It's not an urgent rescue mission.
No, not if it was 3 weeks ago.
Unless they were simply the closest ship and that's how long it took to get there.
Possibly, yeah. Anyway, we remain on the bridge. Spock has dramatic news for Kirk, which he delivers in his usual calm manner.
Kirk is once again irritated by Spock providing nothing of any use to him.
What is the information?
So he can see something, like we heard I think at the top of the show, but he doesn't know what it is. And he can't account for it with any of his devices.
No, but I mean, it's more than seeing something. He says that space is literally breaking up. It's fairly significant.
That's true. He does give that little bit of information there. But Kirk's first response is to check whether the sensors are working properly. Sounds like a mistake, is what he's saying.
But Scotty also has bad news.
Yeah, the engines are causing issues, but again, there's no cause determined.
And at this, Chekhov notes a glowing green starship on his screen dead ahead, which fascinates Spock because although they can see it, sensors indicate it doesn't exist. This is the second episode in as many weeks, I think, where Spock has made claims, was it last week? Made claims that he's that this planet is definitely uninhabited.
Yes,
next thing.
Quickly proven wrong.
Yeah, so his instruments aren't as reliable as what he might like.
This also reminded me a bit of the big green hand of Apollo, which they couldn't scan but appeared out of nowhere on their screen.
They get a better look, and Kirk recognises it as the Defiant.
Yes, it's a Constitution class ship like the Enterprise, which is quite convenient for the set dressers.
Very convenient, yeah. So they get into transporter range, but Uhura is not able to establish any communications, and so they decide to beam across.
Yeah, what could be wrong?
Yeah.
It's bound to be fine. Kirk takes Spock and Chekhov with them and calls on McCoy to meet them in the transporter room.
And for some reason, they're all wearing hazmat suits as they are sent over with helmets that look like those old-fashioned electric razors.
But have their names on them.
Yeah.
So that was quite a nice piece. They have to be able to look after it themselves.
So why all of a sudden are they wearing these suits? It's not typical.
There must be something in the sensor readings that tells them that they may not be able to breathe when they get there.
No, sensors are fine.
No, the sensors are barely picking it up, so...
Well, maybe, I don't know.
They maybe think they could be exposed to outer space.
They're not normally so concerned.
No, not normally, but they are on this occasion.
In any case, we find ourselves on the Defiant Bridge, which is conveniently similar to the bridge on the Enterprise, and they find the bodies of two men.
Yes, one strangling the other. That's an odd way to die, isn't it? So he was strangling him and they both died.
Yeah. Surely the person doing the strangling would, at the point when he realises he's dying, give up on the trying to kill someone else and look after yourself.
At some point, yeah. Unless it's exactly simultaneous death. Which is really unlikely.
A double knockout in boxing.
Yeah. Before anyone has a chance to speak, we get the credits.
And we then return to the Defiant Bridge. Now, as McCoy uses his tricorder, Chekhov asks if there has ever been a starship mutiny before.
Spock completely ignores the fact that he mutinied at least once previously.
That's a complete lie, yeah.
He says no. Well, he says there's no record. So maybe it's technically true if these previous mutinies weren't recorded.
I'm sure there's been more than one.
Yeah, there's definitely been more than one.
Mm-hmm. At it.
Not against Kirk, but when they've had other folk in charge of the Enterprise, they've mutinied against them. And I'm sure there was a mutiny against Spock at one point, was there?
For sure. As Kirk ponders as if he is on stage, McCoy reveals the captain's neck is broken, and Spock notes that the ship is still working, and it is probable that the mutineers are still on board. Well, that's nonsense.
He's bound to be right. Spock's always right.
He's never wrong.
Kirk asks Scotty to prepare a security team to beam over, but as he does that, Spock carries out a scan that shows there is nobody alive on board. Kirk finds it odd, so he sends Chekhov down to engineering and life support to see what's going on, and McCoy to sickbay. Defiant sickbay, I should say.
Back on the Enterprise bridge, Sulu is having a problem keeping distance with the Defiant, which is drifting away, and so he asks Scotty if he should correct for range.
Yeah, Scotty agrees with what he's assessed and orders him to make the necessary adjustments.
Back over on the Defiant at life support, Chekhov is shocked to find a couple of dead bodies, and at the same time in sickbay, McCoy discovers numerous more deceased.
Including people who are restrained.
We'll get to the restraints later on.
We will do. Chekhov then makes his way to engineering, where he contacts Kirk to tell him that it's the same as life support. They're all dead, Jim.
Yeah, there are a number of bodies strewn all over the place. Kirk orders him back up, but he takes a little funny turn and struggles to walk for a moment.
Just for a moment there, yeah. Kirk then contacts McCoy, whose assessment is that everyone killed each other. Now, surely somebody would be left at the end.
Yes, that's the point, isn't it?
You would think. Unless, like we say, the last two deaths are simultaneous.
Kirk asks if it could be a mental disease.
Do we use the phrase mental disease anymore?
Don't think so.
I feel like we don't.
We don't know.
Anyhow, down in the Defiant sickbay, McCoy tells Kirk that all he can really do is take readings and then analyse them when he's back in the Enterprise.
Yeah, I think he says, but according to the medical log, even the ship's surgeon did not know what had happened.
Yeah.
He then makes a startling discovery.
Yes, he makes his way out to the corridor where we see a crewman who's a little bit fuzzy, and when McCoy goes to touch him, his hand passes right through.
Yeah, him and the table.
Yeah, well, he mutters something, and Kirk immediately starts saying, "What's going on? What's going on?" He says it about 4 times while McCoy ignores him. He goes back into his office and puts his hand through his desk.
We return to the Enterprise bridge, and we see the phenomenon play out on the screen as Sulu spots the Defiant is starting to disappear. Yeah,
it kind of fades in and out, and we hear Scotty asking the transporter chief how he's getting on with repairs.
Did we find out how this was damaged?
It's from this being in this area of space. He tells Kirk later on, or in a minute, I think.
No, but did we find out before? Was there a reference to it before?
No, they weren't damaged before. So they beamed out okay. and in the interim period, something's happened because of this area of space that's caused parts of the ship to break.
Okay. On the Defiant bridge, Spock tells Kirk that the sensors on this ship are highly correlated to that of the Enterprise, and therefore confirms that the same fate may befall it or them.
Yes, so Kirk takes the smart decision to return to the Enterprise immediately.
But he has a problem.
Yes, Scotty has been trying to fix these transporters himself for a while now, and unfortunately has only managed to get 3 of them up and running.
So Kirk decides to remain behind and refuses Spock's request to stay with him. He cuts him off when he tries to point out the threat that is obvious.
Yes, the other 3 are ordered to go back to the Enterprise immediately.
However, in the transporter room, things don't go according to plan. It takes a few attempts to get those 3 on board, and they are unfortunately not able to bring Kirk. A couple of things. One, it's like, sorry Kirk, we couldn't manage you need to stay there. But would it not have been more sensible to do 2 and 2 as opposed to 3 and 1?
Why?
Well, 2 and 2 might not have put as much strain on these frequencies. So, yeah,
I think from Kirk's point of view, he just wanted to get make sure those 3 got back. That was his responsibility.
Sure. Anyway.
I don't think Spock was offering to stay with Kirk. I think Spock was offering to stay on his own.
Okay.
I suppose that's down to interpretation, but my reading of it was that Spock was saying, I'll stay and do the sciencey stuff, you go back.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Where is Kirk best, where is his responsibility, and where can he best serve the crew? It's probably back at being a leader on the Enterprise, not losing your captain.
They should have left Chekhov.
Oh yeah, of course.
Strategically, that was the only sensible decision.
Yeah.
They've blown it.
Things get worse, as on the screen they watch as the Defiant disappears altogether.
Yes, Scotty and this transporter chief guy, O'Neill, I think his name is, start fiddling around with the bottom of the console, but Spock reports no difference, and Scotty says there's nothing else he can do.
Up on the bridge, Spock interacts with the computer, who tells him that the next interphase is over 2 hours away, which Scotty anxiously says is too long for him to hold the Enterprise in its current position. They start these new terms, haven't they, this week? The interface and interspace, and
they just drop it in the conversation like you're meant to know what's going on. Anyway, yeah, they should have had some kind of explainer, I think, ahead of this.
Spock tells him to try, as this is the only place where they might have a chance of returning Kirk. And for some reason, the cheeky Chekhov pipes up and questions what is so special about this location, but he doesn't seem too keen on the explanation.
Picture it this way, Mr. Chekhov. We exist in a universe which coexists with a multitude of others in the same physical space. At certain brief periods of time, an area of their space overlaps an area of ours. That is the time of interphase, during which we can connect with the Defiance universe.
Mr. Spock, we will be able to retrieve the captain at that time, won't we?
Yes. However, the dimensional structure of each universe is totally dissimilar. Any use of power disturbs it. If we are not extremely careful, we shall lose the captain and become trapped ourselves.
I see.
And I like him?
Security guards to the bridge.
Aye, sir.
What happened, Mr. Spock? I was attempting to explain to Mr. Chekhov the nature of our problems in this situation when he attacked.
Did anyone notice anything peculiar in his behavior before this?
I think he had several spasms of pain.
Did he seem to be getting hysterical?
Doctor, he seemed more angry than frightened.
He had no cause to be angry.
Take Mr. Chekhov to sickbay, put him under restraint.
So Scotty and the security team take Chekhov off, and Spock confirms what Uhura was saying there about Chekhov's anger.
He then asks McCoy what he needs to find out the cause, but he simply tells him, time.
Yeah, I mean, they're operating fairly well together at this stage.
That won't last.
McCoy also recommends putting some distance between themselves and the Defiant, but Spock explains to him that if they intend to recover the captain, they need to hold this position for 2 more hours.
Oh, that's a long time in that position.
Yeah, but this is... So McCoy at this point thinks Spock should consider whether it's worth waiting for Kirk. It's the complete opposite. If you remember back to the Paradise Syndrome, for example, the second Spock flew away from the planet, McCoy's like, "You can't give up on Kirk, we've got to save Kirk."
Yeah.
Whereas in this one's like, "Oh, well, you know, we might all die. Let's just leave him. Let's go."
Okay, this is probably a good time for me to go off on a little rant here. Or, not a rant, but a little monologue.
Okay.
I think a lot of people expected with the third season and certainly with Spock's brain that there would be major rage and rant from us on that, and maybe some people were a little bit disappointed when it didn't transpire. I've chatted to you about this, and I think the reason for that is within the constraints of a science fiction programme, TV show, there's a huge scope to do whatever you want. There's not a lot that can happen that makes you think, "Oh, well, that's stupid, that wouldn't happen, that's ridiculous, don't be so silly." Because we've seen it all before. The episodes, you know, they're all nonsense in the sense that they're all unbelievable, they're all crazy. Spock's brain was fun, but I would suggest that the concept of a brain transplant is probably not that far away in terms of where we are just now. There's been more ridiculous things in previous episodes. I didn't find it that laughable or that much of a joke. Now, when you compare that to a show like Columbo, which is, you know, it's exaggerated for TV, but it's working within the realms of reality. So anything that's outside the norm would be seen as jumping the shark, or would really be quite incongruous to the character. And there's a big example, the Commodore episode where I did rant as an example of that, because it changed the character so much, and you think, no, that wouldn't happen. You can't do that.
And the strange ringmaster thing.
The strange ringmaster, yes. Which you just think that there's no believable explanation for that. In sci-fi, in Star Trek, you can create whatever you want. You can say, okay, what is the driver for this? Oh, there's an alien, there's a gas, there's a monster, we're time travelling, we're doing whatever. So anything that you want to do, it's one of the benefits, one of the pros of science fiction, the genre, is that you can create and do what you want, and nothing is too absurd. The reason I'm going on this rant is the thing that does annoy me more, the only thing that you can control is the characters, how they act, the consistency. So that annoys me more that, as you pointed out there, McCoy has shown not to think like that. It's a contradiction in his attitude. That is the only thing really that I think that how characters naturally behave. Now you can change McCoy by giving him making him be taken over by an alien creature, or having a drug or something hits him on the head, or he's drunk. That's fine, but you can't have the inconsistency like in this case, and that's where you can make a mess of sci-fi, not Spock's brain or any other alien malarkey.
I suppose the argument for this one is he's being affected by this. Whatever's affected Chekhov is starting to affect everybody. So they're all maybe slightly off character.
Oh, without a doubt, I'm just making the general point. You have to have something. The only things that would make me rant, or the only things that you look at and you go, that shouldn't happen, is characterization. If you do have a driver for it, in this case, yes, the space where they are is causing them to their minds to be distorted, then that's fine. That's an example of it.
But in this occasion, it's one that you have to kind of put there yourself. You have to say, oh, well, maybe it's this, because they don't refer to it. There's no indication that they're being... So McCoy has this contrary take to everything Spock does up to a point. Then he apologises, and then he gets an antidote later on. So it's hard to tell. They don't really address...
But what I would say in their defence is that had it been one character, then you go... That doesn't make sense, but the fact that they are showing these Chekhov's doing it, McCoy's acting,
as well,
Spock to an extent, and Uhura, and you go, right, oh, well, maybe not Uhura, but when there's more than one, that you start to realise there's something happening here. There's not just one person acting out of character. So yeah, that's why I've not. We're a bit late with it, but that's why I can't find it hard to get annoyed by the plot or what's happening.
Sure.
Only by that is the one thing that I have ranted about before, the inconsistencies, when they get down to another planet and all of a sudden they do want to abide by the Prime Directive, or they don't want to abide by, they think it's not real, or they want to change some society, or they don't want to change a society, and that's the thing that stands out as being as something that shouldn't be happening. Inconsistency is the only thing. The rules, the actual rules of how people should behave. Yeah. Anyway, that's my little piece over.
When you picked a good week for it, and we've got no guest stars to talk about later on.
Yeah, but we'll have to pad out this episode.
Exactly. Anyhow, Spock explains to McCoy that when the Defiant phased out, Kirk was caught in the transporter beam, so potentially that could be a way to bring him back, but they need to be in a very specific location. And I'll come back to this point because I'm not 100% sure how this plays out in the end.
Okay.
They need to be in this very precise position, or he might die. There's no margin for error whatsoever, but there's a wee bit of a margin for error. And he's only got 3.62 hours.
Sulu then picks up a vessel approaching, and Uhura is told to raise a red alert, and on the screen we see a triangular ship stopping in front of them.
Yes, and Uhura puts on a video call from the pilot of this ship.
Yeah, a big red mask, calling itself Commander Loskine, and claiming that they are trespassing in the territory of the Tholian assembly and ordering them to leave immediately.
Spock takes this opportunity to introduce himself and his ship, noting their belief that this is a free area of space. And he's told, oh, it's ours.
And we will use force if we have to. Spock calmly dismisses this and tells him that they are engaged in a rescue operation and asks if they will help.
Understandably, the Tholians say, there's nobody here to rescue, you idiot.
Yes, and so Spock explains that it is trapped interspatially and will reappear in just under 2 hours, and asks him to stand by until then. Give us this 2 hours.
So the Tholians quite generously say, we don't believe you, but we'll wait for these 2 hours, and if nothing shows up, we're going to blow you up.
Yeah, okay, so it's not 2 hours, it's exactly 1 hour 53 minutes.
That's right.
Down in sickbay, McCoy and Chapel are trying to come up with a chemical solution
with their My First Chemistry kit,
and an assistant who starts to come over all funny as
how do you do titration?
Yeah, who is this new wee chap that's hanging about?
This guy's just a lab assistant. He takes a wee woozy turn like Chekhov, and
we get a nice or an odd point of view shot. There's some interesting camera angles in this episode.
We can talk about this later on. There's an interesting point about that.
Okay, good.
Yes, Chapel is sent away at this point to run analysis on a sample, and we see Spock up on the bridge telling Scotty there's only 20 seconds left to interface, so most of our 1 hour 53 has elapsed.
And when we head back to sickbay, it is to see the other blue shirt lunge at McCoy, which results in a fight that is ended when Chapel delivers a knockout shot. It's good to see her have something to do.
Yeah. Quite engaged on this occasion. She gave McCoy the heads up initially and then finishes the guy off. So he thanks her quite magnanimously, and as usual he was losing the fight, obviously, being McCoy. I think he asks for security to be called because he wants the guy restrained, but he needs to do some tests on him.
In the transporter room, Scotty tries to bring Kirk aboard, but apparently Kirk is not on his coordinates, so Spock just tells him to keep trying.
It's not great advice, is it?
No.
Sulu reports to Spock that the sensor readings do not correspond with the last occasion that they saw the Defiant, and Spock posits that maybe this Tholian arriving has disturbed the space with terrible consequences.
Another big leap.
Yeah, McCoy phones up to say he got Kirk now, and he's told no. And he's like, oh, when's this interface? I think knowing quite well that the time has passed.
Yeah, and he tells him about the problem he had down in sickbay, but Spock puts the responsibility onto him and tells him he expects he will soon discover the cause.
Well, I think that's Spock brushing him off with platitudes.
Well, yeah.
It's like, stop questioning what I'm doing, go back to your work. And he does this quite a lot to McCoy in this episode.
He does. McCoy hits home a point that the madness condition is not caused by man, but by the position in space that they are in, and that what happened to the Defiant will soon happen to them if they don't get themselves out of there.
Yes, but as he says this, Sulu reports that the Tholians are firing on them.
Yeah, they've kept their promise.
Spock responds with a little bit of sarcasm.
What was that?
He says, oh, the Tholians and their famous punctuality. I don't know, that's not the exact words, but along those lines.
Yeah. Ahura, I think she reports at this point there's some minor structural damage.
Yeah, so Spock has engineering cut off any unnecessary power, and Sulu is told to divert the power he has to the shields, even though that's going to reduce their phaser power by half.
And just then, a huge blow comes in.
Yes, and Scotty contacts the bridge from engineering to say that something needs to be done. He understands Spock doesn't like shooting people, which is wrong, but shoot these guys.
Up in the bridge, Spock tells Ahura to open comms with the Tholian ship and for Sulu to lock in phaser tracking. Ahura gets no response, and a panicking McCoy tells him that he has lost Kirk, and he shouts at him to get the Enterprise out of there.
Yeah, McCoy's just shown up to do this, I think, like 30 seconds earlier. Spock ignores him anyway, fires on these Tholians, and they are immediately disabled, or they appear to be.
Yeah, they're not destroyed, but instead they're pushed away. I think that's the first time we've seen that type of defence or attack.
Have we?
Yeah, a ship being pushed away with a phaser.
No, I don't think it's pushed away. I think it just loses power, so it looks like it's drifting away.
Right, okay. In engineering, Scotty is bad news.
Yeah, the power supply is fused. That doesn't sound good.
No.
This means the ship will drift inexorably, probably towards its doom.
Doesn't sound too good, that.
I like the fact Spock responded with, "How long till you fix it?" And Scotty says he's not even sure that it can be fixed, but nobody believes him.
On the bridge, this causes McCoy to have another go at Spock's decision making and tells him that Kirk would have done everything to safeguard his crew. That's nonsense.
Yeah, Kirk's waited for Spock, Galileo 7, for example, on other occasions.
He's also, because of poor health and safety, caused the death of many of his crew.
Well, that's true as well. McCoy feels that Spock has sacrificed the entire crew for a futile cause here.
Spock, however, rightly tells him to beat it and go search for an antidote, just as Sulu informs him of another two ships appearing in front of them.
No, it's another one ship.
Is it another?
Two, yeah. So
Okay.
it's the original ship plus one new
Right.
ship.
Just beyond phaser range. So they're starting back a little bit.
Yeah, Spock doesn't order phasers be brought online, but neither will this new vessel take his call.
And they then watch as it draws a pattern of parallel lines, which Spock has analysed and finds them to be a force field.
Yes, between the two Tholian ships, they're building this web from the episode title around the Enterprise.
And apparently it's going to trap them forever if they do not complete their mission and escape before they finish it off, the web that is.
That seems unlikely as well. It's quite good special effects. We obviously saw the remastered version, but the original special effects were also quite good for this.
Were they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Emmy nominated, I believe.
Really?
Yeah.
That's good. We go to the briefing room.
If for some reason, in the middle of this crisis, Spock decides to have a memorial service for Kirk.
Yeah. We've never seen this before, like having a meeting to explain what's going on. We've been in many situations where...
It reminds me of, I think it was the Deadly Years, when they've got this, they're all getting older, they're running out of time, and they decide to stop and have a court hearing for Kirk's competency.
Anyway, he calls a very serious looking meeting of the crew. Must be the senior crew.
Well, he tries to get rid of McCoy, tells him to get back to work.
Yes. He's even got a podium and everything. Yeah.
He did an lectern.
Yeah, McCoy, he confirms his department still has no solution, and tensions are at I'd suggest a record high when, as you say, Spock says, "Yeah, well, what are you doing here? Go on, get yourself busy." But McCoy restrains himself and rejects the notion. Instead, he takes his seat to listen to what Spock has to say.
A few hours ago, the captain elected to remain on board the Defiant so that 3 members of his crew would have the best chance of returning safely to the Enterprise. His concern was not only for them, but for all the members of the crew of this ship. You all know the sequence of events. We were fired upon by the Tholian ship. At that time, Captain Kirk may have been alive. I deemed it necessary to return the Tholian fire for the safety of the Enterprise. The Tholian ship has been disabled. But as a result of the battle, we must accept the fact that Captain Kirk is no longer alive.
Take him to sick bay. straight.
I shall not attempt to voice the quality of respect and admiration which Captain Kirk commanded. Each of you must evaluate the loss in the privacy of your own thoughts.
I should say that was some random going off in one there.
Yeah, I loved the way Spock wrapped up. We're here to talk about Captain Kirk, but I'm not going to do that.
No.
You just have a wee think, and we'll see you later.
Yeah. And at this, Scotty calls them to attention and they bow their heads in respect before he takes it upon himself to dismiss everyone. Surely that's not his position.
Well, it's probably been arranged in advance with Spock.
You think so?
Yes.
Okay. McCoy, however, remains behind, and they still niggle at each other when he tells Spock that they have a duty to perform in Kirk's quarters.
Yeah, Spock is trying to put this off, and McCoy wonders if it's because he's pretty sure Kirk's going to order McCoy take command.
That's never going to happen. What does McCoy think is going?
I don't know whether he's just winding Spock up or...
I don't think so. It's not just like a playful wind up. It's really desperate for him to watch this video.
Yeah, it's really strange. So Kirk's left these last orders and McCoy wants to hear them.
It's a strange turn of phrase. McCoy insists that there's a message that Kirk left for both of them should he ever be declared dead. Now that's be declared dead.
Yeah.
It's obviously very specific to this episode. You're declaring someone dead, but you would just say, watch this video if I'm dead, if I die, not declare dead.
Well, I suppose sometimes you need an official certificate if there's no body.
Okay.
There's also a strange turn of phrase where McCoy says he insists that Spock carries out Kirk's order before taking over. Now, Spock's been in command on numerous occasions.
Whenever that is the chain of sort of command here, if Kirk's not around, everyone knows Spock's in charge. He's not going to take over.
There's no alternative.
There's not.
I don't know what McCoy wants to happen here.
Oh, I would love it if Spock just went, yeah, you're right enough here. McCoy, you get us out of this.
Yeah.
On you go. Well, I mean, yeah, on you go, Billy Big Boss. Come on.
I'll put Scotty in charge. Scotty's wasted. He's going to the 6 balls away. So anyway, we go to Kirk's quarters, I presume, where McCoy notes the irony of a hero like Kirk losing his life for nothing on account of Spock getting everyone killed.
And McCoy then comes right out and admits that he intends to have Spock relieved of his position until Spock plays a tape left by Kirk for them both.
Since you are playing this tape, we will assume that I am dead. And the tactical situation is critical, and both of you are locked in mortal combat. It means, Spock, that you have control of the ship and are probably making the most difficult decisions of your career. I can offer only one small piece of advice for whatever it's worth. Use every scrap of knowledge and logic you have to save the ship, but temper your judgment with intuitive insight. I believe you have those qualities, but if you can't find them in yourself, seek out McCoy. Ask his advice. And if you find it sound, take it. Bones, you've heard what I've just told Spock. Help him if you can. But remember, he is the captain. His decisions must be followed without question. You might find that he is capable of human insight and human error. They are most difficult to defend. But you will find that he is deserving of the same loyalty and confidence each of you have given me. Take care.
I'm not sure what McCoy thought would be different, like what he expected, but that's exactly what is going to happen. Yeah, Spock's in charge now. Play nice, trying to help each other, but basically Spock's the boss.
And why would Kirk anticipate that McCoy wouldn't be okay with that?
I know. And also, what's this assumption by Kirk that they're definitely locked in mortal combat? No, it might just be that Kirk's got himself killed because he's an idiot.
No, I think he means Spock and McCoy are locked in mortal combat.
Really?
They're head to head, they can't agree on anything.
Do you not say the ship will be locked in mortal combat and you've got to try and get out of there? I think it's the ship he's talking about.
It says, and both of you are locked in mortal combat.
Well, that's even crazier. Why would he assume that
He's assuming that if he dies, everything will fall apart because he's the one that was holding it together.
That's just nonsense.
Yeah. It's bizarre.
It is.
Even before it, when McCoy comes out, before that was played, McCoy comes out with this rubbish about Spock is stealing Kirk's command, but then taking actions that would prevent him being given the command by not escaping.
Yeah, and I thought we'd get by this as well. Spock does not want to be a captain.
No. And we saw last week, we had that moment where Spock puts his hand on McCoy's shoulder, you know, that sort of moment of friendship when he realises his friend's not well. Now suddenly they're enemies again.
I refer back to my mini rant earlier on. It's about the inconsistency of character.
Again, I suppose you can imply that this area of space is causing these problems, but then why did Kirk anticipate that in his video? He wasn't invited.
Yeah, precisely. He'd have no way of knowing that would have been the case.
Exactly.
Anyway, at this they are both a bit embarrassed. And McCoy apologises before Scotty interrupts on comms to tell Spock that they have an estimated completion time of the force field. They
do, and Spock notes to McCoy that they both now know what they need to do, so they head off and we get a lingering shot of the blank screen where we last saw Kirk.
Now, is this the first time we go to Uhura's quarters?
I'm not certain. If it isn't the first time, it's probably the second time.
Okay. She looks subdued as she puts on a necklace and immediately doubles over in agony. But she comes around quickly when she sees an image of who in her mirror?
Kirk. I'm not sure it's an image or a visitation of some kind that's going on here. But he's in his spacesuit like they last saw him on the Defiant, and he's waving his arms around bizarrely.
Yeah, I refer to him here from now on as Ghost Kirk.
Okay.
She tries to speak to him, but he seems in distress and vanishes out of sight. So she runs into the corridor where she meets McCoy, tells him that she's seen Kirk, and he patronisingly says, yeah, of course you have. We'd all like to see Kirk, but you're a little lady and you're obviously your mind's...
Yeah, leave the thinking to those men.
She protests that she did see him, and when she realises McCoy is not buying it, she shouts for Spock, claiming not to be mad before collapsing into his arms.
At this, we go to engineering, where we see another crazy person going berserk.
Yeah, before that we have an impressive shot of the nearly completed force field.
Yes, it's coming along quite nicely now. Probably just waiting for permits to do the last wee bit.
Yeah, so Scotty has to be saved from this rogue red shirt who attacks him. He then communicates with Spock, who tells him to let McCoy know of all the symptoms that were shown prior to this.
By this guy that jumped me from behind.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was behind me.
Yeah, there's none.
That's the only symptom. Down in the medical lab, we hear Chekhov screaming as he tries to get out of his restraints.
Yeah, which keep him on the bed as Chapel gives McCoy the diagnosis of Scotty's assailant.
Yes, McCoy at this stage does not have an antidote, but he's moving closer. He's positive that it's a Therigen derivative.
Yeah, okay, so two things. One, yeah, she states that the issue is definitely due to the deterioration of interspace.
Yep.
And as you say, yeah, McCoy, at first he admits he's no closer to an antidote, though he is positive this Therigen derivative is the answer, so you are closer.
Yeah, he is closer, but I think he's that frustrated that he hasn't got it yet, that he's not acknowledging that he's closer.
Okay, but that's a major step.
Yeah.
We see the force field increasing, and then Chekhov is screaming in anger and frustration from his bed as McCoy enters to consider his vitals.
Yes, we see on the other side of the room Uhura lying quite quietly.
Oh, she's lying very quietly in a very pointy bra.
Is she? I didn't notice that.
Yeah. Normally these days when you lie down, things lie down with you, but this remains erect.
McCoy comes over to tell her that she's mad. She didn't see Kirk, and that's why they've restrained her.
And she agrees.
Oh, she takes the doctor's opinion as being
shocking.
She's obviously been made to doubt herself by being gaslighted by McCoy so often now.
I think it's appalling. Like, someone you know, you trust, is telling you something, and again, that's what I'm saying, you have to, had this been on planet Earth and a non-sci-fi show, and you say, I saw the vision of the ghost vision of someone who's lost, you say, yeah, sure he did. But they know all this sort of shenanigans goes on all the time. It's not an outrageous thing to consider.
Well, exactly. Maybe if a man saw it, they'll be filled.
Oh yeah, with a Spock had seen it. Yeah, that no problem whatsoever.
McCoy at this point assures Uhura he's going to find an antidote, and she shouldn't put too much worry into the whole situation.
You leave it to me. Yeah.
Down in engineering,
they are beginning to interface when Scotty catches another red shirt looking unstable, although he claims to be okay.
Yeah. Spock tells Scotty they're actually not interfacing, and he's wrong.
Yeah, but he does say that they are quite stable at the moment.
Yeah.
I wonder why, he asks.
Just then, everyone in engineering sees Ghost Kirk.
Yeah, floating nearby. He tells Spock what he's seen, just as he is joined by McCoy on the bridge. Although, he does exaggerate it by saying that he was there as plain as they are. No, he wasn't.
It was kind of blurry and up in the sky a little bit.
Ghost-like.
Yeah. Spock tells him to get up to the bridge, and to be fair, he and McCoy remain unconvinced.
Yeah, he and McCoy come up with some nonsense about the crew seeing Kirk because they are in a crisis and have lost confidence in their new captain.
This is brilliant. McCoy's come up with this from out of nowhere just to get us go at Spock.
It's your fault.
You know what it could be, Spock?
You're such a bad leader, a bad captain, that you've caused the rest of the crew to become so mentally concerned with seeing visions. It's all your fault. That's an outrageous slur and claim.
What do you think? Spock looks like he hadn't considered that for even a second until right now.
Oh, what?
Do you think people listen to other podcasts because of how bad this one is? Or more particularly how bad that last thing that you said was?
Oh, dearie me. Yeah, so that's McCoy.
That's Spock in his place. McCoy then says there's been more attacks, and Scotty apparently seems to be beginning to be affected. And without Scotty, there's no hope of repairing the Enterprise.
But again, Spock tells him to leave things to him and help out by sticking to his lab and trying to come up with a solution, which enrages McCoy, who spins him around in his chair. But I think he then realises he's maybe he's overstepped the mark at this point, and he apologises and blames the environment.
Sure. Spock at this point tries unconvincingly to be conciliatory, noting that he's sure that Kirk would have said, "Forget it, Bones." And I think that's the only time he says the word Bones to McCoy in the entire series.
Is it? Okay, yeah. That makes sense, yeah. However, at this point, McCoy falls forward just as Scotty walks in.
Only briefly though, he kind of recovers fairly quickly.
It's just a stumble, yeah.
And then they all see Kirk.
Yeah, Ghost Kirk has appeared on the bridge, and it looks like he's trying to shout something.
I think it would be better if Kirk had been moonwalking or something.
Yeah.
I think that would have made it much better for the whole episode, or like some other kind of popular dance craze.
However, he frustratingly disappears before they can get any useful information from him.
They can't get any information at all from him. He's not really interacting with them.
Well, I think he's trying to say something.
But I don't think he sees them. Maybe he does, I don't know. I didn't see
I thought he did. I thought he was trying to.
I didn't make it. I didn't think there was. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, down the sickbay, McCoy, probably feeling a bit bad, goes up to Uhura and releases her straps and says, yeah, you were right all along, you're not mad, off you go.
Yeah, there's two things here. That treatment of Uhura is appalling.
Shocking.
He should have not done it in the first place, and then he should have been grovelling after doubting her. And it's the opposite of what he accused Spock of instilling in his crew. He was doing that to her. He was making her, his actions and behaviour were causing her to mentally doubt herself.
Yeah. And it's probably indicative of lots of areas of society where people who are vulnerable or of a particular group are not believed when they report abuses or illnesses or other things.
Sure. But also, they have seen this ghost vision, and he confidently tells everyone is now, he's alive. It's like, no, maybe not. I mean, we don't know if he can bring him back, if this just is this sort of ghostly spirit type thing. You can't assume that he's alive.
No, it's a bit of a stretch. Chapel calls up with test results at this point, and we skip over to Spock's quarters, where he and Scotty are discussing the situation.
So question, does he move into the captain's quarters?
No, he's got his own quarters. He's got Vulcan stuff up on the walls.
Yeah, but will he move in? Because surely the captain will have the bigger room, etc.
I assume there's two rooms the same size.
You think? No, the captain will always have a slightly bigger room.
No.
Yeah.
Maybe the captain's got ensuite.
Yeah.
Spock has to go down the corridor.
And here, McCoy is praising Spock for being right as he looks at some sort of chart and is told that the next interphase will occur in 20 minutes and confirms he can have things ready in time but will only have 80% power.
That's right. At this point, McCoy shows up.
Oh, right, was that... Yeah, so did I see McCoy there?
No, McCoy hasn't appeared yet.
He's not... It was Scotty, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Scotty.
Yeah, he's quite triumphant and enters in the mood to celebrate.
What have you got there?
Compliments of the house. To your good health and the health of the crew.
You found the antidote, Doctor.
Yes, and I've ordered it orally or intravenously for everyone aboard the ship. I would like for you gentlemen to drink it down.
Ensign Chekhov was affected so early. Has he responded to it?
He is his smiling self again, and I've discharged him from sickbay.
What is it?
It's a diluted Therigan derivative.
Therigan, a nerve gas used by the Klingons.
Aye, and deadly too. What are you thinking of, Doc? You're trying to kill us all.
If I remember correctly, it caused fatality only when used in pure form.
That's right. And in this derivative, mixed with alcohol, it merely deadens certain nerve inputs to the brain.
Oh, well, any decent brand of scotch will do that.
Well, one good slug of this, and you could hit a man with phaser stun, and he'd never feel it or even know it.
Does it make a good mix with scotch?
It should.
I'll let you know.
Oh, drink it down, Spock. It's the human thing to do. That's a medical order. Captain.
Did you not think that was an odd way to present an antidote?
Yeah, surely that you could put into a shot.
It's almost like he was delirious.
Yeah.
Anyway, they're all cured now, so we go up to the bridge where Spock welcomes Uhura and Chekhov back to their posts and is thanked by each of them.
And we find out the completion of the web is only 2 minutes away. He also confirms that the Enterprise is ready to enter interspace at any time, and so he communicates with Scotty to tell him to prepare for interphase in 15 seconds.
Yeah, and we get Chekhov counting this down now for the next wee while, and in the transporter room, Chapel and McCoy show up.
Just then, Ghost Kirk appears.
On the view screen of the bridge, yes, Sulu reports that the power field around them is activating and they're being pulled out. They can't maintain their position.
Yeah, he's struggling, so Scotty is told to bring the power up to full capability, and as he does, the ship is rocked and we see it vanish from within the web.
Yeah, and it reappears. I thought maybe they'd gone to like some other dimension or interspace or whatever that is. Nope, they just moved a wee bit.
Yeah, when we rejoin them, Chekhov claims that they have destroyed the Tholians' web, but Spock corrects him.
Yeah, Chekhov has to find out where they are now, and he says they've moved 2.72 parsecs.
Yeah, as Uhura asks if they have lost the captain.
Spock doesn't believe so. He thinks Kirk will have been drawn with them as he was locked in their transporter beam.
So down in the transporter room...
Yeah, McCoy's there. He's got medicine to counteract any lack of oxygen that Kirk has suffered, and as they prepare to transport, Kirk reappears once more on the view screen in the bridge.
And at this, Spock gives McCoy the order to transport.
Why is McCoy doing this? Why is Scotty not there?
I don't know, because Scotty's away drinking. He's trying to mix it with scotch.
Yeah, it does take a couple of attempts here, but Kirk is safely beamed aboard and promptly collapses to his knees.
Before McCoy administers the oxygen and Chapel removes his helmet as they welcome him home.
A little bit later, up on the bridge, we've got a denouement.
Yeah, back in his chair, a recovered and smiling Kirk boasts of having a whole universe to himself after the Defiant was expelled, although he says he does prefer a more crowded place.
McCoy and Spock then lie to him about not watching his... This whole bit's a bit weird.
It's weird. That's exactly what I've got here. It's just a weird, because, yeah, it's all based on the assumption that they would be at each other's throats.
Yeah, are they trying to make out that everything was fine?
Yeah.
And then need his last orders to sort themselves out because they're adults?
Yeah, but he should never have assumed that they wouldn't just go on professionally with a little bit of niggle.
The whole thing's a bit odd. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, he says he hopes they don't have the opportunity in the future to have to view those orders, and they head off at warp 2 on to another adventure.
Thoughts?
I liked it.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good episode. I don't think Kirk was really missed in this storyline.
No.
It reminded me of, I think, Galileo 7. There wasn't much Kirk in that one. So yeah, it's good, but the problem with it is I don't like what they did with Spock and McCoy, which kind of drags it down a little bit for me. So it's not a top-notch episode, but it's okay.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine. It's not one of the ones that bring season 3 down to the levels that we were expecting. It certainly is a very okay, a very decent episode.
Did you understand how they got Kirk back?
No, I didn't try to work it out. Interspace and interphases and all.
We must be in this exact position, except now we're not. We're nowhere near it, and he's moved. But right, beam him in. Here he is.
No, they were. I think what they're saying is they were in the right position, and they effectively the transporter beam hooked onto him. So when they jumped outside of the web, but they brought Kirk with them.
But where were they beaming him from?
I don't know. I don't care.
It didn't work the time before.
It was.
So do you think the whole Spock McCoy thing was interspace driven, or do you think they just don't know how to write them consistently?
I think if you're giving them the benefit of the doubt, it was interspace was the cause of it, because it was inconsistent. It wasn't how we'd expect these characters to react to each other. But then that means that it contradicts Kirk's video message.
Yeah.
That only applies.
That's how they would behave.
Yes, that's the issue. And again, without wanting to repeat what I've said before, these are the things that I think annoy and infuriate me more than any sort of, plot device.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Did you like the Tholians?
It was a big red mask, wasn't it? Yeah.
With the little triangle eyes.
Yeah, it was fine. Yeah, no, just what I said at the start. To me, it seemed obvious that they were trying to. The budget was at the forefront of this episode. They had to save some money.
Yeah, they probably got value for money.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that. I think it's fine. You wouldn't want every episode to be like this, but I think after going down to other planets and what have you, that one based pretty much on the ship is absolutely fine.
That's fair enough.
I don't think you missed the guest stars either.
No, I agree. Some trivia?
Sure.
Originally aired 15th of November 1968. Directing credit went to Herb Wallerstein. We'll talk more about that in a minute.
Or Herb, as the Americans call him.
Herb.
See, that's the thing I've mentioned just before. Sorry for interrupting Ian. But we talked about the Americans calling herbs herbs.
Yeah, we talked about that before.
Yeah, but they don't call it. It's not like the jazz musician. It's not Herbie Hancock, and it's not like the love bug isn't Herbie. It's Herbie.
Yeah. Inconsistency.
That's what we hate. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so you've got Herb Wallerstein, who's directing this, or he's got the credit for directing this. This is the first of his 4 third season outings in the chair. He also directed episodes of shows like Petrocelli, Wonder Woman, and The $6 Million Man before his death in 1985 when he was just 59.
How did he die? Illness?
Just died.
Okay.
The writer, this is a more interesting story, Judy Burns. So she was a freelance writer and wrote this story to raise money for a study trip to Africa. This was her only Star Trek story and her first screenwriting credit, but she would go on to write for shows like Mission Impossible, T.J. Hooker and Knight Rider. On her Twitter account, which she still operates at Judy Burns Writer, she references the second Star Trek motion picture, The Wrath of Khan, but I can't find any link between her and that other than that.
When you say how does she reference it?
She's listing things that she's worked on in her bio.
Ah.
But it's maybe not on her IMDb, it's not on her website.
A script doctor, maybe she wasn't credited.
Maybe, but you'd think she would put it on her website that she's got. I looked on her website
right.
And it doesn't mention it.
Sure.
In the absence of guest stars, we could do a regular.
Okay, can we go for Mr. Shatner?
Yeah, okay. Good. William Shatner played Captain James T. Kirk, as he would in all 79 episodes of the show and 7 feature films. He later headlined shows like T.J. Hooker, Boston Legal, and the TV adaptation of the popular podcast Shit My Dad Says. Beyond acting, he is a director, a producer, a documentary maker, and an author, as well as an accomplished horseman, a musician, an Emmy and Golden Globe Award winner, and a recent inductee to the WWE Wrestling Hall of Fame. But
it doesn't seem like the guy who would like to boast about it.
I'm sure he doesn't mention these things.
I've been watching an awful lot of T.J. Hooker recently.
You enjoy it?
Yeah, I've always liked it, but I downloaded I've got the first 3 seasons now. Sort of thing I put on when I come in from work, just in the background. I've seen them all. So, yeah, it's just ridiculous. He's brilliantly laughable. It's such a
over the top.
Oh, totally over the top. Some of the stuff and the politics and the views and the opinions, and it's fun. It's fun.
He's also a presenter. I read an article this week that he's had a fear of sharks for all his life, and he went cage shark diving. I don't know if it's the sharks that are caged or the humans on this occasion, but he seems to have done that at the age of 90.
Good luck to him.
Anyhow, he is one of Canada's most famous people of all time, I believe, and still going strong at 90, has a full itinerary of convention and expo events on the cards for 2021, although he had to cut his world speaking tour short due to the pandemic.
Stop reminding me twice I've missed him.
I saw him in Glasgow, literally at the start of the pandemic. Everyone was starting to panic.
Yep.
He also appeared in 2 episodes of Columbo, almost 2 decades apart, which makes him this week's connection.
One very good episode, Fade Into Murder.
And one okay.
One okay, one with a fantastic moustache.
Yes. He is a man of many moustaches.
Yes.
More general trivia, this is one of only 2 episodes with no guest stars. The voice of Loth Skene was played by Barbara Babcock, who we've seen before and will see and hear more from next week. This is the 3rd time we've seen a ship of the same configuration as the Enterprise discovered with everybody dead.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ralph Sinensky was initially the director of this episode, and you'll recognise the use of the fisheye lens from Is There in Truth No Beauty, but he was fired partway through the episode and replaced with Herb Ballerstein.
Okay.
There was a recent episode that came out on, I think, the 13th of July this year of the Trek Files with Larry Nemechek interviewing Ralph Sinensky. So it's an up-to-date chat. It's worth maybe checking that out if you've got time to do so. As I said, during the episode, the special effects got an Emmy nomination, but were then replaced in the remastered edition. And the fate of the USS Defiant is explored further in the Star Trek Enterprise 2-part Mirror Universe special in A Mirror Darkly. So if you are desperate to find out what happened to the Defiant, that is where you can get that information. In terms of international titles, there's not much. In German it was Das Spinnennetz, which is the spider web. Not that far different. In Japanese, Eigen Kokani Haitakako Sensho no Kiki, which means crisis of Captain Kirk who was thrown into different dimensional space.
Very descriptive.
Next time.
Oh, did you do the last week? You forgot the socials.
I did. I would normally do it after the next time.
Ah, right. Okay.
Yeah. I'll do it now if you want. That means folk will have to hang on to find out what's next week until after the socials.
Now, yeah, we should also say that I think last week we mentioned the football where England were taking on Italy, and we wished them both good luck. Hard luck, England. Well done, Italy.
Yep. On social media, you'll find us at Trek Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find all episodes on our YouTube channel as well as on the website astartrekpodcast.com, where there's a post up for every show. Next week, it's the 10th episode of Season 3 called Plato's Stepchildren, which has got an iconic moment that I'm sure you will have heard of before.
You think?
Definitely.
Okay, I'll let you know if I have when I see it.
Absolutely.
Until then,
cheerio.
Bye bye.